achievable.
Welcome, everybody. I cut Andy off as he was trying to change the title because otherwise we would have never got started. So welcome to the exit plan no tradesman has with myself, Wayne Bettess, and Mr. Andy Jones, my co-host. So this is, I guess, a little bit of a follow-up from last week's, really, isn't it? In a way, I think there's going to be some crossover here. So if you haven't listened to last week's, bugger off and go and listen to last week's, and then come back here, maybe or not,
and come back. Don't bugger
and
off.
then if you joined us back, hello again.
So,
right.
yeah.
So the worst word that I use too much, and I know I do it a lot. I try not to. Go on, Andy, kick us off, mate.
Yeah. So we obviously delved in quite deep last week on pros, cons, self-employed versus employed. As Wayne said, if you didn't listen to that, certainly listen to that one first, because this is somewhat of a follow-up of then. One of the things that I would probably say falls into the back of the sort of the back of the mind for the self-employed lads. Oh yeah, I will make enough money during my working age window to then not have to worry about it. I'll squirrel it away. But the reality is most guys don't achieve that. That you still see plenty of the old boys, as they're generally referred to, 65, 70 plus, still working, still in the merchant, still, pottering, because, plans haven't really come to fruition. Another point as well being sort of like a classic tradesman thing is, I'll buy a house or two and that'll sort me out. That's different nowadays. Again, unfortunately, it's not quite the investment it used to be. Thank the government for that. They want all of the houses back so they can do what they see fit with it. But yeah, ultimately is, what is your exit plan? Have you got one? Again, I don't think many have. What happens when you can't work anymore? So it's like the age-old saying, everyone has 1,000 problems until you only have one. That is targeted towards health-related problems. Once you have a health-related problem, a serious one, nothing else matters. So yeah, everybody has loads and loads of shitty, trivial problems until you only really have one. So whether it's a health problem that reared from nowhere, or just age taking its toll and saying, your body says no. But the reality is, most self-employed tradesmen do not have an exit plan. They've got a long-term job, or a job, not a long-term exit plan. And as I say, that is a double-edged sword, so to speak, of both a retirement-based plan for their own personal requirements, but also an exit plan for the business. And this is something we do talk about a lot in Alliance. Everyone should have an exit plan for their business, even if they don't want to exit. You'll get guys who say, oh no, I just want to potter in that when I'm older. There's ways that can be implemented. You can stay, you can become you could sell your business if it's structured in the right way, and then become an employee for the business, for the new owners, for the next few years, and do like a 5-year transition period or whatever. And funnily enough, some of the lads in Off the Tools have actually done that and implemented that. And the original founder of the business they've acquired is now an employee, sort of doing another few years as like a handover thing. But yeah, ultimately, it's a lot of kicking the can down the road, isn't it? And oh yeah, I'll deal with that later. Focus is always on like a lot of survival mode. I'll complete this job. I'll get this big job next week done. I'll get to the end of this winter if it's a heating lad, or end of this summer if you're a landscape gardener kind of guy company. But you never really take the time to sit down and plan what your exit is going to be.
Yeah. And I think, please fact check me, somebody, on this, but I think it's something over like 80% of people have less than 1 month's survival rate of money, like in their like at their disposal. That's not credit. Obviously, like, people have credit cards available and stuff, but that's quite scary, isn't it? To think that, in our industry, for the most tradies, their income is tied directly to their body, isn't it? You know, and how often do you actually think about that? How often do you consider, geez, you know, like, that's like a serious statement, isn't it? You know, it's sort of resonating with me as I'm talking. I'm like, my income is tied to your body, and I guess you could argue it's across all sectors in one way or the other, but never more so in a physical job, is it? You know, like if you work in an office and you put your back out, there's ways and means that you can probably get away with working in some capacity, you know, whether that be, you know, on a laptop, work, like, you know, working from home while you recover. But in the trades industry, or any industry that is a manual physical job, that's a serious consequence. And what's worse is, I don't think many people obviously A, think about it, but B, how unfit as a nation we are, you know, is just compounding that risk factor, isn't it? You know, if you're carrying a few extra stone and you're smoking and you're drinking, and now you know, or you're at least identified that your body is directly tied to your income, maybe that's the wet fish around the face wake up moment for you, because yeah, that's hit me to think of it in that context.
And then the other thing as well, that from the trades perspective as well, when you're out and about on the road, to sort of delve into the body side of things, that's one of the things that often fails, and we can testament to this firsthand. When you're stuck in the trenches, you're not eating the kind of stuff you should do. You're not finding the time. So come winter, you're eating the Mackies because you're out on the road, and, like, you know, as we've just said, you've just got to get the job done. You haven't got time. Then you're getting home late, and whether you're either getting home late from the day's worth of work, or you're home late and you've got shit to do. So then it's the takeaway, or, you know what I mean? Then you're not prepping for food for the next day. So you're eating the shit, and that stuff that you can get away with in your 20s, get away with it in your 30s. But when you're in your 40s, and especially then 50s and beyond, that's when that shit catches up with you. You know, there's plenty of overweight tradesmen, mainly because they haven't got the time to eat the right food. It's just, you know, it's the Greg's meal deal, Mackie's on the run. And, you know, when it's, you know, occasional, it's not a big deal, but when it becomes the daily thing, that's when then it bites you in the ass, whether it's, you know, type 2 diabetes or something else, because you're just eating shite all day. So that's one of the nuances, really, of that, you know, things that can catch up with you later down the line. But to sort of get a little bit more back on track, obviously then when you sort of breach 60, and just another sort of geeky fact, half of the industry, the heating industry at least, of the self-employed lads are over 55. So yeah, you know, this is a very...
Just quickly, while we're on the health thing, I'm sure he won't mind me sharing this, because he's publicized it, and I'm not going to go into it. I don't know any details really, but there's a guy who I'm loosely connected with. Like, we grew up in the same area. He was my coach for a little while as well. He's a PT, runs a gym. I think he has multiple locations. Sadly, I saw on social media recently that he had to undergo a major heart operation. I don't know the ins and outs. I don't know what it is, but just to put a bit of context to this story. So he wins Hyroxes. You know, that's the level of fitness. He does partners with this other guy, and they do, like, I don't know Hyrox, but I believe they're like sub 1 hour times, and he wins events and stuff. This guy is like elite fit. And it was actually, I believe it was like it wasn't like a heart attack or anything. It was like a pre-existing thing, like birth defect type thing that caught up. But he shared, and I truly, his name's Gavin Denning, if you want to follow him online, because he's truly inspirational and he's documenting his recovery. But he was like I said, six-pack his whole life, you know, rugby player, like supreme athlete, like ideal body, you know, trained every day. And he had this, obviously, this problem. And the difference he's shown in his videos, you know, like the before, like in March to like now, at how quick the body can disappear, you know, all of that strength. Obviously, thank God, you know, he had that strength, because it's probably what made him survive and brought him through. But the video that he shared, like, that was right recent after the operation, it, like, you know, it really was harrowing to see how quickly the health of somebody can disintegrate. Like, thankfully, thank God that he's on the upward trend, and he's recovering, and he's building his bases back up. But it just highlights how quick something can go wrong, you know. Yeah, and we can never take for granted our health, you know. And please, anybody listening, just try and give it some priority in your life, whether it's what you're eating, whether it's the exercise you're doing. Yeah, I just wanted to share that little bit of a story, because it's literally the last month or two that this has all happened, and I've been watching his journey, and I just felt compelled to sort of share it and give him a little shout out, because he needs every bit of support, and he's a really real inspirational person to even before, like, obviously before he was just inspirational because of his work ethic, his training ethic, and all of that, but even more so now. Yeah, Gavin Denning is his name. So yeah, sorry, we'll get back on track now.
Yeah, it highlights that problem, doesn't it? That, you know, without you know, I'll repeat what I said, you know, everyone has 1,000 problems till they only have one, and that's the reality. You keep going, and without a plan in place, what are you going to do? And that can be, obviously there's multiple ways of doing that, but it's I think a few big things need to be raised, which is an exit for the business, pension, you know, private pension. So we use Nest in our heating business, and all of the employees are enrolled on that. Again, reference the last podcast, it's another pro of being employed. You know, there was a change a good few years ago where the contribution from the business was increased. So that's another little pro, something to take advantage of when you're employed that you don't get when you're self-employed. So it's imperative that something is put in place. Yes, the property thing can work if you've made enough money to buy them outright. Trying to do the classic buy-to-let strategy, buy one, you know, rent it out, save a bit more, put a mortgage on it, doesn't really work anymore, in my opinion. But if you've got enough money to buy a property outright, it's a great vessel to store a large pot of money. And then obviously you can potentially sell it later down the line, should you need to access that amount of money. And there's complex ways that you can mitigate the tax on or kick the can down the road, so to speak, with tax, in terms of like group structures for your business as well. Not financial advice. We are not financial advice. Just
there is a whole podcast from a pension specialist on the podcast. I think it was in season 1. I think it's episode like 88 or something like that. Definitely worth exploring that if you get time, guys, because it's episode 116 of season 1. Pensions with Paul McGregor is the guy's name that we had on. So yeah, definitely go check that one out if you get some spare time, because sadly, a lot of people don't put things in place, do they?
No, and that's when the shit really hits the fan then, because if you've not got something, then you're goosed. So again, obviously we mentioned a little bit about stuff like that. We're not sort of qualified to give that kind of advice. We can just give our opinion. So what we are skilled at, and we'll pivot it back to it, is getting your business to a position where it's has tangible value to it, and it gives you an exit from the business. So rather than an exit from the industry, look at an exit from your business. So again, building a business, not just a job. And again, as we've said many times, it doesn't have to be a you know, the next massive business. You don't have to be a Charlie Mullins. You can just build something that has some value to it. It can just be you on your own, or you and one employee or an apprentice or whatever it might be. You know, a lot of guys then, you know, the lad will, when the lad gets a bit older, they'll come and work for them. So you can obviously then train that, come off the tools a little bit and start to scale the business. But essentially it needs to be a business, not a job. One thing that we do a lot of within the Alliance is creating recurring revenue. So for a heating business, for example, that can be a heating service plan or a care plan, boiler care plan. For, you know, like a landscape gardener, it can be a recurring maintenance plan. For, you know, if you have a carpet cleaning business, again, that can be a regular maintenance top up of carpet cleaning. There's so many businesses that it can be implemented, to basically create that recurring revenue. So, and you're not just creating recurring revenue, you're also creating customers on contracts, which then obviously adds tangible value to the business, isn't it?
Yeah, no, 100% recurring revenue. If it's feasible in your industry, it is something that you've got to jump at it and try and work out a way that you can bring that into the business, because there's so many benefits. And you know, from obviously the fact of getting recurring money every month is a huge one, but also building an asset within the business that can be leveraged down the line, whether it's selling it or whether it's living off of it, you know, and in the future. Stability, the stability it gives, you know, we're both blessed that we done this years ago, you know, and we have a solid base of recurring contract customers that pay us. So it just aids in making decisions, building the business and safeguarding the future, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And it can be, doesn't have to be in a grandeur scale. It can just be creating something that gives you that, you know, whether it's paying for your mortgage or whatever it might be, or, you know, there's so many ways it can be done. So you can, if it's additional revenue, recurring revenue that you hadn't planned for and the business doesn't need, then that can be offset and you could overpay your mortgage, for example. There's just a, you know, one thing that, you know, or it covers the cost of your car or your van or whatever it might be. Another thing as well, I think it's being sort of conservative when you can. So, you know, you have to, you know, like when the going seems to be good, you know, when you're making a lot of money, it's great, but try and avoid that trap of then, you know, driving the nice car or the brand new van, or, you know, elevating your status with the property that you own. Properties are obviously always a variable, even though a lot of the gurus will say your own house is not an asset, it's a liability. Yeah, but that's generally bullshit in the UK for most places. But if you don't fall into the trap. You know, there's plenty of lads driving around in, you know, MSRT transits, you know, 70 grand vans, and it's like, that's fine if you've got the abundance of finances to do it, but you know, make sure you're securing some investments or keeping some of that money, because again, you just don't know when something could negatively impact your ability to work. Because self-employed should never really be the goal. Freedom should be the goal, and freedom should be about being able to, like, throttle the amount of work that you do. And again, that recurring revenue side of things can really be that's kind of it in a nutshell. The idea of you create recurring revenue with a little bit of control, you're not constantly chasing the money.
No, I agree. And you to do this, you don't have to have an abundance of money to get started. You know, what's the old saying? The best time to plant a tree is 30 years ago, but the second best time is today. You know, so even if it's just a small amount that you can start to think about and put aside in whichever way that you want to do it, get started, because time goes very, very quickly, you know, far too quick.
And as you get a little bit older, and I think for me, as I'm sure you agree, you've had kids a lot longer than I have, but as you have kids, it really, really starts to pick up speed. And time just, you get so caught up through working and then looking after the kids. Time just goes super, super fast. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, really, if your retirement plan is to just keep working till, you know, pushing the boundary, working a little bit later, you don't want to be the guy who's 70 plus still working because he has to. Again, it's very, very different, isn't it? If you're working because you like to keep busy and you're going to potter about,
that's a choice then, isn't it?
Or whatever it is. But if you have to, then there's a massive problem there. And again, that is a really big thing, a really big topic, and something we work on a lot within the Alliance, is turning lads who've come through as just self-employed to creating that business that is tangible and has something that they can create an exit plan with later down the line, but also implementing things now. And that's, I love that line of slow down to speed up. It's very tempting to, there's lads that come through and they want to go and buy that nice car or whatever it might be, and look like represent as being very successful in the now. But it's the low key stuff that really as a different thing later down the line. So for example, rather than, like, let's say somebody dropped 50 grand into your account now, as a business owner, you can go and buy a nice car or go on a few holidays with it. Or, we know from our side of things that you can turn that 50 grand into, 200 grand and more by investing it into the business and create that. You could get another engineer on, increase your marketing, things like that, and scale the business up from that. So it's that slow down to speed up that is in these early stages is imperative, because you want to sort of create that business where you're not having to do anywhere near as much, and then it starts to fuel itself a little bit. Getting other engineers on board is part of that strategy, and it doesn't have to be 10 engineers. It can just be one more, so that then if you're unwell or you injure yourself or whatever it might be, they can take over some of that. But also gives you that headspace to think, well, actually, I can generate more revenue than this engineer is costing me, and then I can use that revenue to invest and squirrel away or overpay me mortgage or whatever it might be for that retirement plan later down the line. But and again, it sort of leans back into last week's episode of, unless you're making quite a chunk more being self-employed, a lot of guys are just better being employed and taking that pension contribution, but also gives them that structure financially. So actually, I'm making 2.5 grand a month. I'm going to use 500 quid of that to invest in something for later down the line. But I think it's great when you're youngish and you're healthy, sub 60 or whatever it might be, and you're making good money and you're still physically able to do the work. But it's very, very important that you use a portion of that money to make an exit plan. So if you don't want to grow a business, and there's lads in the alliance who don't want to grow a big massive business. They're just happy with it being themselves, maybe one other lad and someone answering the phone, but the business is in a strong position where they're making good money, and then they're using that money for an investment or whatever it might be. That way works as well. So it's just making sure that it's not that, the water's not coming into the bucket and coming back out as fast as it's coming in, so to speak. I agree.
It makes sense. But just to give you like an example, so imagine there's Dave and Terry. All right, just throwing two random names. I like to use Dave a lot. So Dave likes to work hard, and he spends 20-30 years just working, being a bit frivolous, buying the big new van, the bigger house. Whereas Terry works hard, but he invests in the business. He builds a small little team. He builds recurring revenue into the business. As time goes on, they get older. And at 55, 60 years old, Terry now has the choice, doesn't he? Terry now has the choice. He's got a team. He's got recurring revenue. Poor Dave down the road hasn't got that choice anymore, So ultimately, don't be left with no choice by just working hard and thinking that will be enough, because at some point it will bite you in the ass, and you need to be thinking about that future. Some people are extreme on both sides. Some people are literally live for today, and just F tomorrow, basically. So other people go extreme on the other side, and they plan and they never do anything, and they spend 30 years building a nest pot in the hope that they get to that age to then enjoy life. I'm more on the side of live for today. I'm not fully over in that camp. I do like to have a little bit of security and a little bit. So it is a balancing act between sort of enjoying life as it is now, working hard, earning money, doing things that excite you and fulfill your life. But if you want to live a prosperous life and a healthy life, you might, if I'm blessed enough to get to old age, and I don't want to be going backwards in life. I want to be able to enjoy my life at every season that comes. So we have to have that responsibility to plan and think about that future. And if your retirement plan is just to keep working, then quite frankly, you don't have a fucking plan, do you? You know, you're basically just leaving it to the mercy of the God, you know, to hope that you are gonna be fit and well enough to earn. So the question to you for me is, what is your plan? What is the plan for when you want to quieten down, slow down? You know, and as we said earlier in the discussion, there are many vehicles to build that plan. For me personally, you know, I'm not a big fan of pension pots. Okay, I don't like the lack of control, the lack of limitations. So for me personally, pension pots, like traditional pension schemes and stuff, has never been something that I want to sort of go into too deeply. I want to build my own financial security, not reliant on the stock market, not reliant on the whims of some pension manager, you know, that might do things wrong. And that's just my personal choice. So I've taken steps to invest in businesses, build my own businesses, and property and things like that to come. So for me, that's my way of mitigating it, you know. But at least, and I'm not perfect, you know. There's a lot more I should be doing, and I'm going to take heed of my own discussion today, you know, and make sure that it takes a step up the priority list, so that I don't keep thinking, do you know what, next week, next year, you know, I'm going to be 40 next year. And in my head, I'm still a 20-year-old lad, you know. I might not look it, you know, and whatever, but I can't believe that I'm going to be 40 next year. And that time has just gone. My son is going to be 20 at the end of this year. Right? Like, it's just like unbelievable how quick it goes. And you can't just keep kicking that can down the road. You have to, ultimately, again, back to last week's episode, the buck stops with you. So if you don't take the steps needed and you don't secure that future and work out what that exit plan is. So for me personally, I'll share it. I don't care. So I don't want to sell my heating business. I want to pass it on. You know, my son's going through and will hopefully take that over. And I've got other children, you know, hopefully they will come into one of the businesses that I'm involved in. I don't want to sell it. I want to earn from it, you know. So as time goes on and as my children get involved, you know, I want the business to be in a place where it can pay me a salary, it can pay me a money, you know, but everything I'm involved in, I have that approach. I'm not one. If the offer was right, I would consider it, but for me personally, I like business. You know, I don't see doing business as work, you know. So it's not like I have a job. I genuinely feel free to explore things, do things, and whatever. So I'm not everyone will be sitting there with that mentality. Other people, you know, will want to build something, sell it, and generate a nice pot of money that way. And there's no way, there's lots of ways to skin a cat. You've just got to find what suits you, your personality. I'm a very reactive person, so having money tied up in things is never something that I like. So I like to be fairly fluid. Is that the right word? Fluid.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
I want to be able to, if an opportunity comes up, I want to be able to take anything that I've got and move it and do it. Whereas I find like traditional pensions and stuff like that are a little bit too robotic and a little bit too slow moving for me. But that's just a personality trait, you know. Other people want that security, want that steadiness to the ship. Whereas I like the waves. I like to be rocking about a bit and test my balls.
Yeah. So I just want to add a little bit onto the end, really, which essentially is obviously we are here to help. That's what we do. That's what we do in Off the Tools. And if this is something that's, you know, maybe hit a bit close to home, or it's you know, got the juices flowing of thinking, shit, I need to have I don't have a plan, I need a plan. Then yeah, just reach out to myself or Wayne. You know, we're always available to jump on a call. We can have a chat to you, and we can go a bit more into what we do at Off the Tools, and how we'll, you know, tell you about how we're working with the lads within Alliance to get their business to a point where it's not completely reliant on them. They're not shouldering all of the weight of the business. Again, you know, you don't have to think like you're going to create a big, massive business. It can just be a little tight thing where you're getting, whether it's be recurring revenue, which is going to allow you to make more money than you do now from your time, as well as giving you an exit, or maybe having thinking, actually, yeah, with the right systems in place and maybe someone answering the phone, then I could actually have 1 or 2 engineers who are making that little bit of money. And then that gives you multiple exit options. You can either stay within the business, scale it down, work 2 days a week, work half days, whatever it is, as you're a bit older, or spend more time with your family. If you've got employees, engineers, making money on the days where you're not, and the pricing structure in the business is set up in a way where you're making a good chunk of profit from them, not just self-serving, but you're making profit from them, then it's allowing you to scale and grow your personal wealth, let's call it, when you're not always working. So yeah, that's my 10 cents on it.
Cool. On that note, we'll bid you farewell. Hopefully you've enjoyed the episode. Please give it a like, give it a share, tag a friend, share it to a friend that might add a bit of value to their life. And we'll see you on the next one. God bless.